Hello, we are Total Party Overkill, and what is D&D anyway? Hello everyone, we are Total Party Overkill. I'm Spencer, and I'm joined by my cousin Tanner. Say hello, Tanner.
Hello, everyone.
um, we are two guys. We played a lot of D&D. Tanner actually introduced me to Dungeons and Dragons a while back. Um,
Yes.
and we kind of just thought that this like podcast and kind of talking about like just what we know and our specific way of playing D&D. um
And our own D&D shenanigans.
yeah, would be really fun. And we kind of as you can kind of see by the title and maybe you've guessed, like we play D&D very loose. um and kind of different than some people play it. um and we kind of just believe that, like, D&D can be whatever you want. But we are going to be talking a lot about like our experiences and how we DM, um
Yeah.
or play, for that matter. um
hmm
do you have anything to add to that, Tanner?
Um. Yeah. No. That wraps it up for me like that. Yeah.
All right. And for those of you who haven't played D&D, this is kind of a nice intro video to kind of just what Dungeons and Dragons is. Um and for any dungeon master out there who's ever tried to explain what D&D is to someone, be it like a family member or a friend who hasn't played it before, I'm sure you know that it is a nightmare. Because what is D&D anyway? How do you explain to someone that it's not quite a video game? It's not quite just storytelling, you know? Um
Not not just a board game. Not just dice. Not just math. Like it's so much.
yeah, like it's so unique. Like role-playing games as a whole, not even just D&D. Um and it's so hard to explain. It's
hmm
so hard to explain to people. Um, but Tanner, how do you usually try to explain D&D to your newer players or family members who haven't heard of it?
All right. So how I bring people, like, say I'm bringing in some new players, right, to play. How I'll explain it, I'll kind of I'll say like it's almost like a a story, right? I am, as a dungeon master, kind of like an author, and you are a character in this story. You are playing out this character. You will be acting this character, almost kind of like a play, or however the heck you wanna act it out. Um, and I'm just kind of controlling everything else around you. So you will act out your character, I'll act out the things around you, and we kind of like hit off of each other to create a story almost. That's how I will usually describe it to a newer player.
Yeah. I kind of usually start off with saying like it is a collaborative storytelling game with
Yes.
rules. And then I kind of build from there, and I kind of tell them if, for example, a good way that I like to start is most of my people who've played have usually played the very popular Elder Scrolls games. You know, I
Oh
go
yes.
I go. Imagine Skyrim, but you're not trapped by dialogue boxes or like game mechanics aren't in the game. Like if you want to go like lick someone's foot, for example, you can do that. You know, but then I also tell them that there's rules. So like I tell them like you can't just say that you're going to fly, like in real life, you can't just be like right now I am going to just take off into the air. There are limitations based on the rules that are set in the game that you can and can't do. Are you strong enough? Are you fast enough, Um, and then
Mm-hmm.
the final thing I like to lead them into is, and the biggest part about D&D is the dice, the chance. You're
Mm-hmm.
you're good at some things, worse at other things, and then you roll dice to see if you succeed. And at that
The out.
point, if that's like the most I can give them without them actually having played.
Uh-huh. And as you play, you kind of just figure it out, you
Oh
know.
yeah, like once D&D in my mind is easy to learn. Just the
Totally.
core game. Like, no, I'm not talking about like being perfect, but I've
Or
seen
knowing all the
people.
rules or
Yeah, I've seen people like I go in and they know nothing about it. They think it's a video game. I sit them down, and by the end of a 3 hour session, they like know what it means to roll initiative, and all that fun stuff.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Um so that's how you usually kind of like introduce it to your players and stuff. What hmm what does it mean to you to play D&D?
Oh gosh. This question has a lot of weight. Um, just because like D&D is like it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I know for
Mhm.
like plenty of the people I've played with, it legitimately is almost like a form of therapy.
Oh, okay.
Like I have had players and they like tell me their characters and stuff, and as they play out their characters, like just as their friend, I'm like, holy crap, dude, like you're playing through like a fantasy version of your own like trauma.
I've noticed that in some of my players too.
And it's so cool. It is
Uh-huh.
so cool. Or just like things that people have done and they start like role playing through it, and I was like, you kind of it kind of starts to click that like D&D, even though you are playing a character, some part of yourself is going to like leak in to that
Uh-huh.
person, and it is such like a therapeutic thing to be able
Yeah.
to play this character that has like borderline superpowers at higher levels if we're being honest.
Even at
Um
lower levels, bro,
and kind of
sometimes.
like just like grind through whatever you're dealing with, you know? I think for me, and D&D, it is a game, you know, it's just like a fun, you know, thing you can play. But like one of the biggest takeaways that I've like gotten from it is like, I mean, it's a legitimately impactful game in a lot of
It's
circumstances, dude.
it's such a beautifully creative outlet to express yourself.
Yes.
When you're acting out a character and like going through a storyline and having fun while just like destroying monsters on the way,
Yeah.
like it's awesome. And I've definitely noticed when I've played as a player in any of your campaigns are very much more role play and like character development driven than I feel mine have been. So
Yeah.
I've definitely noticed in your campaigns like your players get so into their role playing and their
God,
their
love it.
characters and it's such a cool thing to see in your campaigns to see your players use D&D as that way of a creative outlet, you know.
Yeah. And then like beyond that, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I've also run tons of campaigns where the players are not interested in role playing at all,
Oh
and
yeah.
and at that point, D&D is just it's such a great way to make memories. I would honestly say that like of the top 10 memories that I've had in my life, the past 5 years, a good 6 of them are all from D&D.
Oh yeah.
Like,
But
oh, continue.
that's the thing. It's like for one group of your players, it's like a creative outlet to express themselves. Another way, it's just a way to have some freaking fun and just mess around.
Oh yeah. Cuz like I mean like and really I love really serious campaigns with lots of role playing and political intrigue, but sometimes, you know, I remember after the ACT, we got together, we played a D&D campaign that was just just dungeon delving and sword clashing and
Oh
goblin killing,
man,
and it was just chaos, and that's why it was so fun.
man, that's that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
sick. Yes,
Like
sir.
just to know that like you don't have to play D&D a certain way, and that
Mm-hmm.
if at any given point you're like, I do not have the energy to really build an in-depth character and write a backstory, that you can just show up with like a goblin wizard named Soda Can and still have like a great campaign, and like
Yeah.
have tons of memories. Like you're not limited. You can really play it
Mm-hmm.
however you want, and at the end of the day, if you had fun with it, no one should be coming up to you and be like, "Wow, you played it wrong." You see?
100%.
Yeah.
That's that brings me to kind of my perception of what D&D is.
Okay.
When I first started playing D&D, um I would say a lot of people who actually play like 5th edition D&D or any edition D&D would look at what I was doing with my friends and be like, "That's not freaking D&D. What are you doing?" But I would still call it D&D. What I would do with my friends is um before we had anyone who actually knew how to play, we would literally get like, I think it was like a D6 or even just like a D4 or whatever. We just made up random characters. Like I remember I made this character. Um we had like 10 minutes to like go off by ourselves, make a character, come back together, and then we'd play. I made this character was like an assassin that had a crossbow that only shot coins for some reason.
I mean, by
And
all
then
means.
my yeah, I don't know why, but it just seemed cool to me. And I just made this character, and my other friends made characters, and we all just got together and we just like had our characters talk to each other, and then it ended up in a fight, and we just fought each other, and like we just did rolls on like a D6,
Yeah.
and like and all damage was with a D6, and we just like messed around like that, and that was cool. It was so fun, and it I would also call that D&D, even though there were literally no rule sets we were following. We just made everything up as we went. We just used a D6, like. So I would describe, like, if I were to make an actual definition of D&D is to me, it's a game where someone controls a fantasy world, kind of, and a group of players play characters that interact with each other in that world.
Yeah.
And there's something random that decides outcomes.
Yeah. And it is so funny to me that you bring up D6, because my first time playing D&D,
Uh-huh.
I played it with you. You brought me to a group. You had
Mm-hmm.
someone DM for us, and we played a legitimate D&D
Yeah.
campaign. And I played my Dragonborn Paladin, uh, Kriv, who
Kriv.
who also happens to be a little Easter egg that I've noticed in your freaking. Is that why your
Oh
Twitch
yeah.
name is Kriv Konia?
That's what yeah, totally. That once you left, I literally took your character sheet
Yeah,
and I used your character in another campaign, and
yeah,
I've used that name Kriv so many different places.
yeah. But
Yeah.
I went home after playing with you, and we live in different states, and I was so hungry to play D&D, and no one plays D&D where I'm from. No one did. Um and so I got a bunch of my buddies together. I grabbed 2d6s from an old game set that we had, and I
Mhm.
just started making stuff up. I'd only played D&D once, and I was just like, yeah, we're going for it. And the worst part was I got a taste of natural ones and natural 20s while playing, and
No.
I kept the natural one. So it was natural 1 and natural 6. So it was
With these sixes?
a crit fail on a 1 and a crit success on a 6.
Oh, that's so fun.
You had a 1 in 3 chance of getting a critical failure / success. And it
That's
was
so funny.
chaos. chaos. But honestly, like those memories of like what I have, those like first campaigns where I was just making stuff up. We didn't have actual character sheets. We just had blank sheets of paper, just rolling a
Mm-hmm.
d6. Like I think so fondly back to like those times playing the game.
Totally. Yeah. Do you remember when you came to California? Before we played, I
D4.
like took you aside. We did a D4. We got together. I'm like, all right, dude, make a character, whatever. I'll make a character, and then we're just gonna fight each other.
Yep.
We just had a D4, and
Yeah.
we just messed around with the D4.
Essentially, what we
Just to kind of like prepare you for it. That's how I thought it would have been a good way to introduce you to D&D.
oh, it was perfect. Essentially, what we did for those of you kind of like listening is we got a four-sided die, and we essentially set up a scenario, and Tanner would go and he'd lay it out. He'd be like, "We're both in a forest," and all of a sudden we see each other, you know, and immediately that would kind of start combat. But there'd be like, I mean, there was like a few seconds of role playing before we like really got into combat,
Uh-huh.
where we like see each other, be like sneaking around, and then we just attack, but we didn't have weapons. We'd literally just be making it up, and on a 3 to a 4 we hit, and on a 1 to a 2 we miss. So we'd essentially just go, oh, and I pick up a branch and I throw it at you, and then I'd
Oh
roll a
my
d4,
gosh.
and then if it hit or missed, doesn't matter. You react to whatever happened, and then you go and see like, oh yeah, and I shove you into the water and da 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 da. And it was such a good just like mental exercise to prepare me for what was gonna happen.
I forgot that is how we did it. Yeah, that's a damn. Yeah, that was sick. That was fun. That was a good way to do that.
Yeah, so fun, so fun.
And um I know like at least when I first started playing D&D, quote unquote D&D,
Yeah.
um I slowly like I didn't know the rules. I was kind of forced to play it that way because I didn't know the rules. I didn't have the player's handbook. I didn't have all these things to play D&D with. Eventually, like you get to learn the rules. You get to learn all the little ins and outs as you play more and more, or you DM more and more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I still find myself going back to doing a world without any rules. Like
Yeah.
I've done them with you.
Yeah.
Like when we've gone camping and stuff, we just kind of get together. We're like, all right, we're playing D&D, and all we have is like a D20, and we just like play characters and just mess around.
Yeah. And and I'm just gonna like preface this a little bit before. I feel like a theme that people are gonna kind of start to find is that we call role playing in general D&D. Um, and that isn't necessarily like slight any other role playing like engine, or like
Yeah.
set. Um, I really haven't ventured too far out of D&D. I've like kind of played a few other ones, but for the most
Mm-hmm.
part, like, and maybe this is wrong of me. I might get flack for this. Leave a
Mm-hmm.
comment or something if you just got such a problem with me doing this. But it's that I kind of lump role playing games in general into D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know that I probably shouldn't, but for me, and I mean, it is kind of true that D&D was like the first one to do it and do it well.
Mm-hmm.
Like D&D was like the first like great and legendary um like
Yeah.
tabletop role playing game. And there have been plenty have done it before. I know in high school I did a Star Wars one. That was really cool. Um, but for me, whether I'm like role playing a zombie apocalypse game while going camping with my cousins with just a D6 or not, for some reason it kind of all gets lumped into D&D, but it's role playing games in general.
Like there's official like D&D is literally like an actual trademarked thing. It
Yeah.
has official rules, a bunch of different editions. The current edition is 5th edition. But like it's the same for me. I just call any type of unless it's like any type of role playing game, unless it's specifically like an actual game that I've bought and it's just another
Yeah.
role playing tabletop game, if we're making it up, if we're just like role playing on our own just for fun, I like you said, I just call it D&D. You know,
Yeah, dude.
that's what I was saying with my definition of D&D. It's like it's so wide and it goes even further than um the actual like D&D rules.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I kind of feel is I've kind of began lumping a bunch of things that aren't necessarily D&D into D&D.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Same here, dude.
um and I feel like we've kind of covered a lot of the bases that are like how we like how we view D&D and what D&D is to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of covered like how explain it to other people. Um but I'm kind of curious. I'm not sure if this question is going to catch you off guard or not.
Okay.
Was there like a defining moment where you were playing your like first few times of D&D that you really started to grasp that this game wasn't at all what you were being prepared for? Because I have one in specific that happened to me that made me realize that this wasn't just a board game.
Huh. So,
Like for example, mine. When we played for that first time, I was prepared for the combat part. You know, I was kind of ready
yeah.
for it. You know, I'd seen my abilities and stuff. And it caught me so off guard when we got to the city and we went to go talk to the mayor. And I remember your friend did a great thing. He did an amazing role playing thing where I was the new player and he tried to get me involved. And we were going to intimidate the mayor. And he was like, "Oh, yeah? Have you ever seen a dragonborn before?" And kind of like dropped the mic into my hands. And I was just like, "Oh, shit. What do I say now?" Like, now it's me. And I just remember my mind racing, being like, do I talk in a voice? What do I say? Am I mean? I'm not prepared. I'm not in the mindset of a dragon, you know, or a dragonborn. And just like that initial panic and being like, oh, like I'm not playing Uno anymore. Like there's so many
I'm
like
not playing Uno anymore.
there's so many like moving cogs and pieces that I was just like, oh, this is so much more. So much more. And then like after that encounter, which I want to be honest, like I struggled through, like I'm sure like how it ended up was I was just like, "Oh yeah, Mr. Merman, you want to die?" or something like that, you know? Like I'm sure it wasn't great.
Yeah.
But I'm sure like after that moment, just knowing like, "Oh, I can say whatever I want." You know, like I can solve issues in any infinite number of ways in this world.
I can't. I'm racking my brain. I can't think of a moment like that because I feel like I had been playing already a type of D&D, quote unquote D&D, where we were already like interacting with each other in those ways. We were already like talking to each other as each other's characters, and there weren't like it was like I felt like at least that part I was already ready for. When I actually jumped into an actual like 5e rules game.
Yeah.
I don't think I had a moment like that.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And I guess my last thing that I kind of really want to like hear is what I mean. Obviously, you have tons of memories with D&D, tons of them. But early in your D&D career, whether it be like your first few times DMing or first few times playing, what like got you hooked, or what was just something that got you like loving it?
This was before I got playing in an actual game.
Okay.
Like we had like hours and hours of gameplay before actually going to an actual game.
Yeah.
It was my friend's older brother. He was running what we called a super random game.
Okay.
He came to us and he's like, "Okay, we're playing D&D. Both of you are making are making a character, and you get to choose one superpower, anything you want, and one weakness, right?"
Yeah.
I I think my superpower that I chose was I could shapeshift into anything, but it was always the same size.
Oh
So
gosh.
like I could shapeshift into an elephant, but I was always like a 3 by 3 foot square of an elephant. Or I could shapeshift into a dung beetle, but it would be like a 3 by 3 thing of a dung beetle.
Yeah.
Or like, it was just that type of random like stuff, that random just messing around, and whenever that randomness just got me hooked. That's the thing that got me, because this man DM'd like, he didn't DM in a serious way. It was always like, if you got a crit, if you got a natural 20 or a natural 1, it would be so incredibly extreme that it was like way either OP or terrible.
Yeah.
Like okay, you're sneaking. You roll a natural 1, you trip, and you break your head open.
Oh
And now you
gosh.
need to see a doctor or you're going to die. Or you go to a witch doctor and like to have them cure you from some curse, and you accidentally roll a natural 1. Okay, this is something that happened. They literally like changed our physical anatomy
Oh gosh.
without us asking, without us knowing. So now, oh shoot, now I have like 3 legs and my head is on my back. Like, that randomness got me excited for D&D. That randomness got me really into it.
Yeah. That's
Just based on the dungeon master that had us playing.
Yeah. For me, like I said, I played D&D once, one time before I was immediately sent off into DMing for the next year and a half straight before I even got to be a player again. Like that's a true story. No one around me knew how to dungeon master. And so I came home and I was like, I want to play. And I really fell in love with being a DM on that same type of level. Because I didn't buy a pre-made campaign for my first one. I just started making stuff. And I forgot if I heard about this sword, like looked it up or something, but I know that people have used swords like this a bunch. It's just a cursed sword, you know? And I had one of my friends pick it up. He was a Dragonborn too, and he grabs this sword and it compelled him to murder someone. And so he had to do a wisdom saving throw. He failed. He goes and he just cuts someone down in the street. And I remember we had 2 other people in the party. So immediately he throws the sword in the bushes and runs away onto the beach. And the other 2, and keep in mind, this is my first time dungeon mastering a legit game of D&D with like 5th edition rules. They're like, oh, they'll probably pay us money if we go kill our former companion.
Because he just killed this guy.
They chased him to the beach, and the Dragonborn was a barbarian, the Dragonborn who killed the random person. And these 2 other people, I think it was a wizard, a dwarf wizard named Rook, and a human, no, an elf ranger named Siltorin. And they were like, hey, you, stop there, we're going to take you in. And at that point, the Dragonborn was just like, I have to fight. And he ended up killing them both. And I just remember the moment he knocked them down, they were like laughing. They were like, oh, ha, 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 ha. All right, you can let us up now. And he was like, I hit him. I hit him while they're down. Until they had failed all their death saves.
Oh my god. So was that their first game?
That was their first game and my first time dungeon mastering. In 1 second, or in 1 session, I mean.
1 second. It all happened.
in one session, my first session DMing legit D&D, I got, well, I guess I mean, it was me because I was the dungeon master. I was in charge of making sure shit like this doesn't happen.
Mm.
Um, but yeah,
I
I let
I
my players fight to the death, and it's to this day one of my favorite memories of D&D that
I
that they killed each other and that the barbarian 1v2'd them with ease.
that is so funny. That oh man, and that's such a fun thing,
Yeah.
especially as a DM to just kind of like let happen, you know?
And it can get chaotic. Like I don't recommend you
Yeah, yeah,
letting
yeah.
your players fight each other. Like you should try and keep your players from killing each other. Like that is kind of your job, make sure everyone's having
Mm-hmm.
fun. But if you ever as a DM are like, "Oh man, I'm really worried that I'm going to mess up this session." Just know that my first time DMing, I let my players kill each other. That's how my first time DMing ended. I've also had multiple total party kills. So, it
Damn.
happens. It happens sometime, guys. It's all about
Damn.
D&D. That's what D&D is.
And if everyone's having fun, that's all that freaking matters, dude.
Yeah, man. Do you have do you have any other stories, thoughts to share? What's your
I don't think I have anything else. I mean I wish I could say I've had a TPK. I wish I could, but I haven't.
it's kind of like shitty that I think this way cuz like honestly, you don't want to kill your players, but also like
Mm-hmm.
at some point it's a rite of passage, but a rite of passage that you don't want to take necessarily. like like
Uh-huh.
when you get a total party kill, you shouldn't feel good about it.
Uh-huh.
Like if you kill your whole party of players, you should feel bad, like the game ended. You shouldn't like cry about it. Like obviously it happens and like death is a part of the game, but like don't be prideful about a total party kill. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you DM for as long as me and you have, Tanner, your total party kills is coming. Just I'm gonna let you
I've
know right now. It's
I've
on its way.
I've I've been trying. I've been pushing a little harder with some of my deadly encounters. But
All
my
right.
players just tend to figure shit out.
And that's how it is, man. Well, with
Yeah.
that, once again, we are Total Party Overkill. We have a few social media accounts. We got Total Party Overkill, where we post clips from our streaming and just video game memes in general for any of you guys that are interested in that. And then we have our What Are Rules Anyway Instagram account, which you can get updates about this little talk show podcast thingy on YouTube, as well as just some good old fashioned D&D memes. Um, and with that, I guess we'll see you next time.